You're listening to Where You Live with Gene Sullivan.
Welcome back to Where You Live. I'm Gene Sullivan, broadcasting from the True North Painting Studios. The show is also brought to you by American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency, and Extreme Exteriors. Before we get into our next topic, I'd like to let all Where You Live listeners know we've got a free gift for you. We put together a bi-monthly newsletter called What's New. A lot of what we'll talk about, we discuss in that newsletter, and also we cover in further detail. It's yours free for the asking. A great resource. A lot of people love receiving that. All you've got to do to start getting your copy is to give us a call during the week at New Concepts at 952-922-2500. Ask for Lori. She'll make sure that you start receiving your subscription either electronically or by mail. If you also go to our website at www.newconceptsgroup.com, you can pull down on the menu information about the radio show, listen to past podcasts of our show. My contact information's there too for those that'd like to ask a question or have us discuss an issue on the show in the future. So go there as well. But next is a person who is regular on our show, someone that I appreciate his wisdom and thoughts very much, Attorney Dan Greenstein with Bernick Lifson. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Gene.
Thanks for taking some time to be on the show again here today.
My pleasure.
I wanted to ask you a question, and this has to do with every once in a while in the life of a homeowner association, you'll deal with a specific board of directors. And it seems like, by and large, they do not listen to the advice given to them by the other professionals that they hire. And I'm thinking three groups come to mind. There's, of course, the management company, their attorney, their legal counsel, and their CPA. And there are, to me, it always seems kind of silly when you get to a point where you're paying these people some good money, and then by and large, they just don't want to listen to what you have to say. I'm sure you've experienced that every once in a while, haven't you?
I sure have, Gene, and it becomes sometimes frustrating for me when there's a clear issue and I see a clear course of action, but for some reason a board member or a number of board members, they simply don't want to do it, and it leads me to ask them, well, why are you asking me for advice then? And it's frustrating for me, and I worry about the association in those situations because the board, while they ultimately have the decision-making power, when it's an issue where they have professional assistance, professional help, how can they simply deny the advice that they're getting?
Yeah, it seems like probably, what do they call it, a penny wise and a pound foolish. You know, they're trying to save a little bit here, but they don't realize what some of those unintended consequences are. Let's talk about what some of those big issues are where people try to save money and try to go without counsel. Let's talk about the area of negotiating legal terms of a contract.
Oh, Gene, I tell you, I get more calls from association board members where they've entered into a contract with a vendor, and lo and behold, they decide something's gone wrong or they're not happy with the vendor, and then they give me the contract and they say, what should I do? The problem is often, and most of the time, at that point, it's too late.
Too late.
Because the vendors use contracts that favor them. They're not looking to protect the association. And I think it's very important that before entering into a contract on behalf of your association, which we all know can be a lot of money sometimes, that board makes sure that their attorney has looked at the terms and made sure they're protected.
Yeah. And there's certain things that are very troublesome. There are those contracts that people don't realize, the ones that are the automatic renewals.
Oh,
And,
yes, absolutely.
And you've got a small window of opportunity where you can cancel, and you've got to cancel a certain way. Otherwise, whoops, sorry. Too bad, too sad.
What happens with those auto renewal contracts is typically there's a new board in place, and they don't have the slightest idea that they're supposed to notify that vendor in advance if they want to get out of the contract.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why you need to rely on some of those professionals. And in that particular case, the management company can also be very helpful in reminding. I think that it's probably the job of an association management company to go through a yearly orientation after there's been a new election, because, like you said, people forget. They forget what's in place with contracts. They forget what was said, what was promised, and that is, I think, a very important issue.
I agree with you. That's an important part of a good manager's job, which is keeping everyone organized.
Yeah. Let's deal with another one. I've only seen this happen once, but it has happened where someone has said, "Let's try amending the governing documents ourselves."
Oh my. I've seen that many times, and often, a board will want to amend their documents. They know they're outdated and need some revisions, but they don't want to spend the money to have an attorney do it, which I get. I've hired attorneys before, and it's very expensive. But what happens in those circumstances almost all of the time is that it will take the attorney more time to go through the board's drafted changes and to fix them than it would if the attorney just did them from the start. Not too long ago, I had an association ask me to revise their documents, but they wanted to do the drafting because there was a retired attorney on the board of directors. And when I tell you it was the biggest mess, it became the most difficult problem for me, and I'm trying to keep their fees down. But the attorney on the board, who never practiced in the area of real estate, argued with me about every single point. It was just a nightmare.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have just thousands and thousands of dollars spent, and you're nowhere closer to your goal.
I think part of the problem, Gene, is people that don't work with an attorney on a regular basis don't develop a trust for their attorney. If I'm working with a client on a regular basis, they're going to know how I work. They're going to know my ethics. They're going to know, if I bill them, it's going to be a fair amount, or I'm happy to talk with them about it. And I would say that's probably true for all professionals. And if you don't have the occasion to work with those professionals often, you kind of go into the relationship with a distrust, and sometimes it can lead you down the wrong path.
That's a great point, Dan. I'm finding that the older I get, the more I am trying to spend my time trying to encourage that with boards, and that is, let's not talk about, everyone wants to talk about, well, what's your fee? Well, that's almost irrelevant, Mm-hmm. Let's talk about philosophy. Do you agree with the philosophy, like you said, of the attorney that you have? Do you agree with the philosophy of the management company? One reason why people may not be taking their advice is they've got the wrong team put in place.
That could be. It takes some time to know and trust anyone you're working with.
Yeah. Yeah, and people need to understand that. I think that is probably going to help them in the long run. I think save so much more money if they realize that they're dealing with people that are on the same team, that have the same ideas, the same ideals, the same principles as they do. talk about a couple of other things that boards should be careful of where they try to do it alone.
Well, I would say, preparing a budget for the association and doing the financials and the year-end taxes. It takes some training to do that kind of work properly. A skilled manager can do that for you. Obviously, there's tax professionals and CPAs that can help you. I've run into a couple of associations where they wanted to do an annual review themselves without using a tax professional. And it's that kind of area is so technical and so specific and can have such bad consequences in the future for the association. I just think it's, without a doubt, the worst thing a board of directors can do.
Yeah, it can certainly blow up in their face. I've seen where associations later on try to get a loan for a project or for something special, only to find out because they've done everything internal, those documents aren't trusted documents by the bank. And now they say, hey, you got to start all over again.
And Gene, sometimes when someone is trying to buy a unit in an association, that lender may want to look at some of their tax financial documents. And if they don't make sense to the underwriting department, then they're not going to make a loan to someone wanting to buy in that association.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, we've got to take a break. Can you stay with us for just another couple minutes?
Will do.
Okay, we're talking to attorney Dan Greenstein about some things that board members shouldn't do it alone. And we've got a couple more that we want to cover with you, but we're going to take a break, so don't go away. We'll wrap up today's show after these messages.